I'm so grateful to be here with you today. It's such an honor and a privilege for me to be in your presence because you are the Christ. It's just that simple. You are the Christ. We all are. We are perfect. Perfect. Neither behind the point of perfection nor advancing toward it. And we must see ourselves therefrom. Most of the time, the aspect of me that I present and project and represent is not that self. So when people say, "What's your name?" I say, "Well, I'm Brother T, or I'm Tony, or I'm Daddy Jim." My kids, grandkids, my whole family, they call me Daddy Jim. My first name was James. My grandfather was Daddy Jim, and so when I first had my first grandson, I'm like way too young to be a grandparent. I can't handle that, so I asked my mom if it was okay if I could use my grandfather's name as Daddy Jim. My first name is James. And she said, yes, of course. So my whole family now calls me Daddy Jim. I have many, many names, as you do as well. Father, grandfather. One of the names that I always pause before I say it is because my egoic self doesn't have faith. It's when I say that I'm a minister. But we're all ministers. Everyone here is a minister. And we are preaching and teaching what we believe in 24/7. Even in our dreams. We're practicing it there a lot, right? We're practicing what we believe in. And for me, that's been the problem for many, many decades. I believed myself to be something that I was not. The talk title for today that I grappled with a lot, I've changed it 2 or 3 times to get to this point. But the reading that Beth shared, the title of that reading was from a book called Christ Mind. And it's a recent channeling. I shared with you earlier that lots of more people are channeling, lots of more information is coming through. And this is Daryl Price, and it is his book. And that particular chapter and that reading was called The Rise of Truth. And that is exactly the time we are in now. We're in the time of the rise of truth. And while you don't have to look too far to see how aggressively the mind of fear is trying to hold on and hold on to the power that fear has held for millenniums. Actually, a little over 200,000 years. Where'd you get that at, Brother T? You come on Tuesday nights, you'll find out. Right? There's more. There is more. There is more. There's always more. Recently, I was told that Jesus is in the 12th dimension. I'm just trying to figure out what the 5th dimension is. So there's work to do. There's a lot of work to do, right? And I'm speaking for myself here. You may be, about 6 inches off the ground 24/7, but I'm still struggling with my root chakra, But sometimes the pineal gland opens up, and the third eye opens up. But we have to clear these chakras. And so also there's another event that I didn't mention earlier, but that's on Thursday nights, I think, now. And is that going to be continuing at 6 o'clock? So there's a gathering here as well. So this is becoming a busy spiritual center here. But we got a little bit into that this past week as well. So there's so much, so where do you begin? Where do you start? Well, for me, it began with my study of, and I shared a little bit last week, but I started to study a little bit about Zen philosophy and Buddhism, right? So I got in, and I was into it before I knew I was into it. And I didn't really understand it at all, but I would just get up and practice meditation and was starting to find some benefit from that. And last week I shared that one of the first things I experienced that was revelatory for me was discovering what being present was. So I'll share that quick story with you. I was really struggling, and this is back in 1994, over 20 years ago. And I was out in the driveway on my hands and knees, washing the tire on my brand new Corvette. And I'm like, what is being present? I'm down, what is being present? I'm scrubbing this tire. And suddenly, I had an intimate moment with my tire. I remember it just like I was there right now. For the first time in my life, I realized what being present was. I was present with my car, with the tire on my car. See, we can be present with anything. That's going vertical, not going from the past into the future, thinking, and projecting, and making shit up. Can you say that in here?
Yes.
No, it's about being present. So the thinking mind, we push it back a little bit. We start to exercise our most amazing power called ignorance. Yes, you can ignore the ego. I'm going to practice ignorance. I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to say, get thee behind me. And I'm going vertical now, right? I'm just being present. And that's what meditation has really been a tremendous aid for me in helping myself to get to the point of being present and staying present. And then that's where the magic, or the truth, I should say, really happens. This is the rise of the truth, right? So that's why so many people, especially, going all the way back to Buddha, was always admonishing us to practice meditation, because that's where we can begin to watch our thoughts, and we can begin to detach from the stories that we're weaving, from the past into the future, back to the past into the future. And that is a big deal, and was a big deal for me. So I was being present with a tire on my car. And it was a spiritual moment, right? Because I had a moment of insight, a moment of recognition of truth. And one of the things that I began to do in studying this little book I told you about last week called The Rich Man's Secret was I was in the habit already of practicing as me. Well done. We're going to put a bar there and see if you can go there. We practice. I would test everything. If somebody says, okay, A, B, C, D, I'm like, okay, I'm going to test it. I'm going to test it to find out. If it fails, then I can disregard it. Being present. I recommend testing it, because it will bring great joy into your life. Just that simple practice of being present will bring great joy into your life. So that's the whole thing about the spiritual practices that we teach here at True Thought. They've been time tested. We say it this way: the truth is always true. It doesn't change up on you. And it's generalizable. When we're first beginning to study spirituality, we begin to get down and drill down into the very specific things, right? But then we begin to see that a spiritual practice or a spiritual principle, just being present, is generalizable to all things. So no matter what's happening in your life, I will go back to a quick experience of being a boss and having employees, and back in the 90s, and unfortunately we were downsizing, and I had to let this lady go. She'd only been working with us for a few months. Anyway, I go to a restaurant, and we're sitting there eating, and this guy walks up to me, and she's about 2 paces behind him, and it's her husband, and he is very angry. He was very, very angry and felt that she had been that she wasn't being treated fairly. The decisions we have to make sometimes come from all different kinds of places, and all different kinds of things affected. And it's rarely personal. I'm just speaking now as a boss, having climbed a corporate ladder. It's usually economic. Or sometimes somebody else is telling us what we have to do. And anyway, I had been practicing being present for a few years at that point. And I'm just sitting there with this other person, and he's just berating me. And I'm just listening. I'm taking it in. I go present immediately, right? Your strength, here's a good one. This is from A Course in Miracles, right? Your strength lies in your defenselessness. Whoa, that shakes up your world. Anybody got an insurance plan? And so I was defenseless. And I was just listening, and I gave him an opportunity to have a voice. And he went on, and I never interrupted, I never complained, I never argued, I didn't have any, I just went into meditation. And I didn't do it intentionally. It's just how it worked out for me. And after he began to unwind a little bit, he said, well, he said, all right, man. He said, that's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. He said, but I just want to say one more thing. He said, man, you really can take it, can't you? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I've been sitting here berating you. And he said, you look like you're not disturbed about it. I said, well, I'm considering everything you've said, but it was something in the past. And all I can say is that I believe that everything happens for all of us for the best. And I hope that your wife and you continue your journey and that you have great success. And that was it, right? I could have argued. I could have got up. Let's go outside. He was a lot bigger than me. That would not have been a good plan. So these spiritual principles work everywhere without limit all the time. Think about that. The truth is rising. The more we practice spiritual principles, the more we practice learning spiritual principles, the more we unlearn, get thee behind me, the ways of the world, the more comfortable we're going to be in our life. That does not mean, and for those of us which would include everybody in this room, that have stepped upon a spiritual path, it is not easy. And there's, a spiritual path, kumbaya, and have great joy and bliss. You can get there, but boy, there's a lot of work that's necessary before we get there. And a lot of that work is like tearing yourself apart because you're having to shed off long-held committed beliefs about relationships, about sex, about family, about children, about grandchildren, about parents, about the government, about economics, about religion. I mean, it's all over. We've all got, no one in here is exactly the same opinion as anybody else in this room. We are all over the map, right? But if we begin to accept and agree upon spiritual principles, God is. Can we agree on that? Can I hear an amen? Amen. God is. But He's not out there. But He is out there. She is out there because everything is in here. Because everything is in God. The rising of the truth requires us to accept the truth that God is out there and in here. And where you go to connect with that is up to you. Find the easiest pathway. Most of us spend, speak for myself, decades doing it the hard way. Doing it the hard way. Thinking that my ego, it wants to control not just the very next moment of my experience, but every moment of my experience. And to make it better, it wants to control you. Think about that. Every one of us wants to control every one of us. It's impossible. Mission impossible, right? It's insane. So we get to the point of talking about the ego, and for people that have been studying A Course in Miracles, might piss you off, but this whole thing about the body's not real that's bullshit. The body is real. If somebody slaps you, you're going to know it. You're going to feel it. See, the ego has kind of worked its way even into the best teachings of our day. the best teachings of our day. And certainly it worked its way into the earlier teachings of our time. We were playing with the idea just the other day about, we were talking about, going back in history and our ancestors and this and that and the other. And I was sharing with the group the other night. I said, what I'm doing right now is trying to create content, maybe write some things, or maybe even a small booklets or something, so that I'm leaving some breadcrumbs so that when I come back on my next incarnation, I can find myself. Yeah. Yeah. Because I would love to get back to where I'm at right now. Because I have let go of a whole bunch of stuff. So let's all start leaving breadcrumbs for our next incarnation so we can find ourselves and find the wisdom that you're gaining in this life. Because you can't, I said last week, it's really hard to do this in one lifetime. Wow. Let's take a good deep breath. I cry a lot. Not because I'm sad. When I had that experience back in 2014, I was laughing hysterically and crying outrageously, just and then laughing hysterically for 3 or 4 days straight. Claudia would ask me a question, and I would hear her question, and Spirit would answer it in my mind, and I would go, "What?" And then I would start laughing hysterically at the answer because it made the question sound so ridiculous. Our questions, the ego's questions, are ridiculous. But I would have then the moment of clarity, and then I would just go, "Whoa!" I'd start crying because I was getting all this insight of what was happening. Yeah. So I will tell you this, my brothers and sisters. Tears are healing. I cry as much as possible. Because it's joyful. It's so, because it took me months and months to figure out, to give a definition to what are you crying about? Because finally it came as like, and Charlie and I were talking yesterday, and he said, somebody said something, and he was posing a question or giving me some wisdom, and he said, you can't simultaneously be in gratitude and be what? Anxious, right? And I said, that's right. Why not? Because anxiety is an aspect of fear, and gratitude is an aspect of love. And guess what? There's only 2 emotions. Everything else are aspects of those emotions. And there's only 2, and you're either paying attention to this one or paying attention to that one. You got your back turned on you can only experience one at a time. And you're choosing which way you're going. Who has all the power? You do. You have the power to practice ignorance. I don't even know you're there. I'm going to turn to God. God is. Love is. Peace is, joy is, bliss is. I'm going to go this way. We get to choose all the time in every moment. And so my practice today, which the reason it's a practice is because we continue to get caught. Spirit, the world, keeps manifesting opportunities for us to see where we're still paying attention to the wrong thing. Right? And so it's so subtle. At first it's the big things, like my ex-wife. Well, I got a right to be, And now it's like, oh, that's bullshit. Right? I'll probably see her next weekend at my son's wedding. I love her, but I got all my lessons that I needed. She probably got all the lessons that she needed, and she has a different life and I have a different life. But I can honor and respect and love and appreciate that relationship, you see. I don't have to be angry. Trust me, I was for years because of the battle over children and all the stuff that goes into those egoic relationship. So when Claudia and I first joined together, I was a student of A Course in Miracles, and she was a minister with, at the time she had just become, she was finishing her ordination with Centers for Spiritual Living, which is another New Thought community. And so she was, very informed and educated. She spent years, I think she had a master's degree in theology, in ministry. And me, I came from the school of hard knocks, you get banged around a little bit. But my spiritual journey was just organic. It just came, it showed up. And what I was going to tell you earlier, I'll come back to, don't let me forget, was one of the insights that I had from my first foray into spirituality. And I think what brought me to where I'm at today more easily. But I asked Claudia, I said, all right, I've had 3 marriages and 1 or 2 relationships in between those. And an egoic relationship just doesn't work. It hasn't worked for me. So I would like to have a different kind of relationship. And A Course in Miracles teaches it, and it's called, some of you might be familiar with, it's called a holy relationship. Anybody familiar with that term? A holy relationship. And she goes, yeah, okay, I can do that. She's a minister, holy relationship, piece of cake, no problem. Right. You hear me, honey? And she admitted to me later she really didn't know what that meant, right? And I didn't elucidate it at the moment. It came later. But I did say, first time she came to my house, I said, there's only 2 caveats or 2 rules here of tenets at the house. Okay, no people pleasing and no private thoughts. And when I said no people pleasing, she goes, oh, and then I said no private thoughts. She goes, wait a minute. You ever been in a relationship with anybody where there's you're not allowing each other, you're not going to, no private thoughts. Whatever's up, you got to say it. Sisters, okay, sisters, I get it.
Private thoughts.
So that was the rule, right? Of course, we're still playing the game, but to simplify the thing about the holy relationship is really, instead of reacting to whatever is going on in this other person's life, in each and every response, you go to God first, right? You take that good deep breath. And for me, it's like I turn in and I'm like, are you there? Okay, how can I, because now, see, instead of being ego, I'm a we go, right? Because I'm joined with spirit, now we go, right? Instead of just the ego, me being by myself, the ego mind is insane. And so instead of me being insane and acting insane, because you have no choice. If you're listening to the ego, you may be acting sanely as far as the world's concerned, but we're all in the same insane asylum, right? And the only way to escape is to get out of it, not try to
Join.
not try to fix it, or anybody else for that matter. That's definitely an insane idea that you can't fix somebody else. No, right? So we go to God first and say, what's the truth? How can I be loving here? That's it. And the other thing is, like, no matter what that partner of yours in the holy relationship, no matter what they want to do, you don't throw any shade on it. You don't argue with it. You don't complain. My wife goes, well, I think I'm going to go to Spain for 7 weeks. Okay, honey. Okay. I mean, I didn't really want her to leave for 7 weeks. We haven't been apart for 11 years. Our anniversary is coming up in 2 weeks. She's in Spain. And the anniversary of the first time we met 11 years ago is coming up before she gets back too. So her birthday, our anniversary, our 5-year anniversary, and our 11-year anniversary are all happening, and she's not even going to be around, right? Now the ego would say, oh, that's not a good thing. Let's fix that. We got But in a holy relationship, it's like acceptance, allowance, right? Surrender, peace and joy. If you want peace and joy, practice a little acceptance, allowance, and surrender. Because if you let everybody else be who they want to be, insane or otherwise, then what are you being? Present. Christ-like? Be Christ. Don't be Christ-like. The ego says, let's be Christ-like and be good, and then people be impressed at how good we are. Bullshit. Well, yeah, some people might be impressed, but you are not impressing yourself. You know you're lying to yourself because the ego is pretending to be spiritual. Spiritual is as much being present and being. 2 words, being present, being. One of the admonitions in the Course in Miracles is you need do nothing. Phew. That'll mess with you. Being present. And when you're being present now, you're joined, because that's the place where you join the Spirit. And now you begin to become expressing through and as the energy of that joining, because the energy of that joining is love. And love has no agenda. Oh, love's going to fix... No. Love has no agenda. What's the agenda of love? Being at peace. What does that require? Doing nothing. Not judging yourself. The ego is judging. And God is not judging. The Holy Spirit is not judging. The Holy Spirit is nothing more than your right mind. It's the way Jesus explains it in A Course in Miracles. The Holy Spirit is your right mind. So imagine your sleeping self at night, and it's completely unaware that you're safe at home in bed. It's pretending to be the real you. And then you wake up. No matter what it did, you're not going to go turn yourself into the police because it killed somebody or did something stupid, because you know that it's just pretending, but it's not aware of you. And imagine then this self being able now to connect with and be present with and begin to represent and express as the loving self, the true self, the Christ that you are, the Christ that you are. So go home and look in the mirror and say, is Christ in there? So we practice some language that brings it forth. We make some decrees. We make some claims. We say, I know who I am. Say this with me. I know who I am. All right, take a good deep breath. Close your eyes. And this time say it and speak as your higher self. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know how I serve. I am known. I am known. I am. I am known. I am the Christ. Take a good deep breath. Powerful, powerful stuff. You just made a claim and you began to speak as your true identity. This is our ministry. But we're just the messengers. This is the ministry of truth. This is the rise of truth. And so we're going to talk about some tough things. We're going to work through some tough things. We're going to have lots of hugs, lots of love, lots of forgiveness, lots of acceptance, lots of surrender. But we are not going to be afraid to claim our true identity. We are God's perfect child, neither behind the point of perfection nor advancing toward it. And when we will allow ourselves to see our brothers and sisters with that vision, the Christ vision, how do we do that? Take a good deep breath. Turn within and say, are you there? Who am I asking that question of? Of my higher self, my right mind, my Christ nature. And then say, I'll step back. You be the voice. I'll let you use me. Because the ego's been using you all along, and you've been doing it with little or no resistance. It's time to start resisting that and giving your higher self an opportunity to change everything for everyone, because you are being that one. And so it is. Thank you for being here with us today. God bless you.